Hi, I'm Bernadette Hill, continuous improvement expert and host of the Savage Simplicity podcast. Welcome to Storytellers, where I talk with smart women who are navigating relatable, sometimes deeply personal challenges through finding the joy in simplicity. So if you're looking to turn your strengths into a success story, then be savage about reclaiming your time. Join us, listen in, and become a part of the Savage Simplicity movement. Today on Savage Simplicity, we're joined by a powerhouse in higher education logistics. Meet Jen Carmichael, director at UC Davis and a recognized leader with more than 23 years of service at one of the top public universities in the country. A multiple award winner, Jen is also president of the University Logistics and Supply Chain Association. In this episode, Disciplined, Neurodivergent, and Unapologetically Real, Jen opens up about the unique way her brain works, cutting through chaos with clarity, and leading without apology. If you've ever wondered how to build structure without losing yourself, this one's for you. Let's dive in. Welcome, Jen, to the podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much, Bernadette. Appreciate the warm welcome.
Today, we're going to talk to you a little bit about how you balance leadership, motherhood, authenticity, and energy in your day-to-day life, as well as balancing all your work obligations and being a servant leader. So first, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about where you grew up and your childhood. So can you take us back to your childhood? What was life for you? What was life like for you growing up?
Sure. So I grew up in Sacramento, born and raised. I still live there as well. Pretty strong family unit, though not without challenges over the course of our evolution, right? We live very close together. All roughly, at least my immediate family, within about a square mile. So all of my sisters, in fact, one of my sisters lives next door to my parents. So very small community, and very supportive and loving. And so I have a good basis.
Wonderful. As you grew up, when did you first understand that your thinking patterns might be a bit different than the rest of the folks around you? And then how did it shape your early experiences?
Yeah, so I don't think I ever understood it. I just popped out, and that's how it was, right? But I think one of the key things is that my parents understood it quickly, and they were able to react. So I am very energetic. In fact, one thing that my sisters still hold over my head even to this day is the fact that they could never have candy growing up that had sugar in it. And so at the time, years ago, no particular label on my behavior, personality, traits, just super energetic. I would go long periods of time without sleep, super hyperactive, always on the move. And so those things may have been challenges at a young age. I'm reaping benefits of those today, though, I will say. And kudos to my parents for understanding very quickly and channeling those energies. They could have been very detrimental to my development, and also just my work habits and my lifestyle at this stage in my life. But due to their abilities to channel, I was able to kind of turn those into some pretty good strengths that I can lean into when I need to.
You mentioned that, you had some challenges early on, and I'm certain that even with the benefits, there's some remaining challenges to the behavior you have. Can you explain a little bit about those early challenges and which ones have remained in your life?
Well, I could tell you it's hard for me to sit still on Zoom, so it's something that I have to practice. It's rare that my feet aren't moving, even if my body and my what you see on camera isn't. So yeah, early on, paying attention, things of that, was one aspect, right, that had to be dealt with. But one thing that came in pretty strong right from the get-go was my parents are very disciplined. And so with very high standards. So the expectation of myself and my sisters essentially to do things like do well in school, to be good team members and sportsmanship. When you have both of those things tugging at each other, it requires you in the middle to bring in discipline, right? Where you have to sit still in school, you have to pay attention. And frankly, mine isn't a lack of being able to pay attention. It's more along the lines of needing to be busy at every minute. And those things can easily be channeled into learning activities. So maybe being busy is just having to do and learn about whatever subject in school that is in front of you. And that's enough to keep your mind engaged and keep you moving forward. And so I think that early on, they did a great job of doing things like putting me in sports. And I can tell you that that's probably the basis and foundation of why I've been successful in many of the things that I have been successful at this point in my life, is just the blend of discipline, teamwork, creating win-wins, and your own personal contribution to that, right? Is one of the reasons why I think a lot of the foundational skills that I have today to deal with being ultra busy and trying to check every box, right, even when time is limited, why I can hit the mark on many of the things that are important to myself, my family, and also in the workplace.
Can you talk about how learning discipline early helped overcome some of those early challenges, and what's led and having leaned into discipline has led you to being has been a benefit to your personality type today?
Sure. I think part of it, so having high standards, my parents really were a stickler. Number one, that we are part of communities, right? And so when we do things, it's not just about achievement for yourself. So that's one thing where setting your goals and making sure things are win-win is definitely right there in front when you're planning your path forward. And then when you talk about discipline, time management for me is pivotal. And I have an Apple Watch, and I got to tell you that I set a timer probably 20 times a day. And that might sound crazy to some people, but being on time to things, respecting other people's time, compartmentalizing my efforts based on priority, importance, those things all help with kind of channeling and that discipline that you need to be successful. And so I think those things really have developed my tool set, and they come from childhood and they come from sports, right? That teamwork that you need, prioritizing tasks and knowing where you're going so that you can define a path to get there that doesn't take a lot of rework. Having a path and having a goal and being clear is important, and it translates directly for me into productivity.
I like that you talked about time management and tying that into effort and rework. I think a lot of folks that you work, when you go to your job, you think, okay, well, I want to make sure that I work 8 hours productively in a day, or however long people work, right? And then you go home and you don't think about your day like that. You don't think about it how maybe having to do things over and over again in just your regular life leads to time wasters. But you did talk about the role of sports, and you are a social person to this day. So sports taught you not just about channeling energy and discipline and an understanding a shared goal and making sure there's a win-win for everybody, but also in building your own self-confidence and in how you interact with others and collaborate. Can you talk a little bit about building your confidence through teamwork and collaboration and how that impacts you today?
I think that's definitely a journey, and it's one of life's great struggles, right? Is building your own confidence. And I can't say that we ever get there necessarily, but I'm in a good place at this point in my life. And I don't look at things as life and career. For me, there's not work-life balance is a very interesting term. There's just life, right? So when I think about managing time and creating relationships, I don't do it differently necessarily at work than I do in my personal life, or that I do when I'm participating on teams, because I think that's just being authentically you, right? I,
Mhm.
I don't know if I would have the energy to maintain different styles for different situations necessarily. You definitely tap into different strengths, right? And you might use different methodologies depending on a situation, but for the most part, that authenticity helps you get where you're going faster, I think. And so, and it's kind of the same with teams and collaboration.
You know, you've been at the university 23 years, and you've built a reputation for being prepared and effective. And then you've talked about a toolkit. What are some practical tools you use in order to be prepared? So discipline is one thing, right? Get the action of making ourselves do it, you know, at a drum beat, even when we don't want to. But then
Right.
there's another piece of that, which is also around preparation and around confidence. And I know you've won a few awards here, and I know you're preparing for a big showcase in June, and some other things you've got going on. What are the practical steps you take to prepare for?
Preparation looks different depending on many, many things. For me, I make lists. Lists are one of the things that I do to stay organized. I'll use Smartsheet. I love to
Mhm.
write lists still. Crossing things off of a list helps me feel accomplished and it helps me feel driven and moving forward. Doing research is another thing. I have to do a presentation tomorrow, just off the cuff, on a topic on tariffs, actually, which is a moving topic, very fluid, and very complex. So not being afraid to say I don't know, I do that
Uh,
a ton, is one of the things that helps me be prepared, and mentally taking stock of what I know and what I don't know on subjects is another thing. I do research on the internet a lot. I reach out to colleagues a lot. And that's one of the things that I think is something that people don't do quite enough, is build their network, and don't be afraid to ask someone and admit you don't know and you're looking for their help, because that helps you prepare. It helps you understand what context there is out there in the world. I reach out to other universities, gosh, multiple times a week, asking
oh,
them, how are you doing this? Because I don't want to reinvent the wheel, right? If somebody else is doing it, number one, kudos. And then two, maybe we can enhance it and work together and make it better. And that's one of the beauties of higher education, right? Is that we share things. We want to work collaboratively. And so we'll say that most of the things that I've been awarded for aren't on behalf of my own efforts alone. In fact, I don't think that it really works that way for anyone. For the most part, I've written a few articles, and it's very humbling to be sought out for certain things, and every time it happens, it's a tad bit of a surprise. But it's great to contribute. So I never generally say no to things. I've won quite a few things over the years. I'm a safety coordinator for campus. Safety is a huge thing. So I've won a couple safety awards on campus. Um, I won Woman of the Year for supply chain, which is not a higher ed award. And it was really humbling to be recognized in a group of about 200 women nationwide for that annual award. And that was private industry and higher ed. And generally, higher ed doesn't garner much attention in the field out there in the world. So that was pretty amazing, and a little bit blindsided about that one. But like I said, very humbling, and the company was amazing, that I was CEOs and Fortune 500. I mean, that's pretty amazing stuff. Also, things locally at Davis. That's one of the things working at UC Davis. It's so gratifying to work in an environment where people are recognized. And so some innovation awards over the years. But like I said, everything, it might get awarded with one person's name on the plaque or the trophy, but it's a driving force of people that pull these initiatives up to the surface and get them recognized, and also make them impactful enough for people to pay attention to them and for them to pay dividends towards our mission. And that's in personal life as well as work life, right? We're always working within teams to get things done, and it might be one person that gets recognized, but it's really important to realize that generally things never happen because one person is driving forward.
You are such an inspiration to me because it is. I know how hard it is to be a woman in logistics. I know how hard that is. Before coming to UC Davis, most of my career has been spent in manufacturing and industrial manufacturing, a lot of that in logistics. And so I wouldn't say being a woman that's successful in logistics is rare. I would say being recognized for being successful in logistics is rare for a woman. And you've talked so much and so passionately so far about your energy, goal setting, bringing people along with you, setting a direction, right? Understanding how to collaborate, networking with others, being able to say, look, I don't have all the answers, and then researching to find them. That has built your confidence over the years. You've also said, though, you don't like to say no. So how do you manage it all?
That's something that I sometimes don't do very well. It is hard for me to say no.
And yet there are times when you do have to say no, right? Can you tell us a little bit about when do you draw that line for yourself?
Yeah, there are some times I have to say no. Part of that comes from the effort that I have to expend, right? So if it's something that I'm fairly knowledgeable of, whenever a request comes in, there's always a judgment on time. There's always a judgment on resource strain. And so I think that is one of the things that can be a snap judgment. If it's something I can handle quickly, I will get it off the plate. But then there's other times when you can't say no also. There's times when my team they might not have the background or the experience to answer the question completely, or maybe the turnaround on the question or the situation, it has to be resolved immediately. So you always have to compensate a little bit for things like that. I've said no to some kid things, like sometimes field trips. I don't drive everyone, which surprises my kid every time that I don't drive something, because over the years, I've almost driven every field trip. I can't necessarily work in the class every day because the way my schedule is, but typically I can drive field trips because I can plan them out far enough in advance. But sometimes as I've advanced through my career, they conflict with things I can't push. And so there's times I have to make compensations and not do those, but nothing that is earth shattering, things ferret themselves out, and the things that are important get prioritized. And that pretty much delves up some of the things you'll say no to as well. So I think it's a combination of things that why you would say yes. I have a great support system in sisters, and it's a trade-off, right? So they have the same support system in me. It's definitely a team thing. And if I need someone to get picked up from school because the office calls and they're sick, I have family I can reach out to that can go do that. And so I think it's vital that you have that, especially if you're going to try and swing a lot of irons in the fire kind of lifestyle. So my sisters are very supportive. And likewise, if I need to drop something and go, also the administration, my team, and it's definitely, you have to be supported, but you also have to be supportive. So it's a two-way street, and developing those relationships where you have support, especially if you decide to live, everyone needs it, but if you want to be living a life that's very fast paced and you have a lot of responsibilities or a lot of boxes to check, not so much responsibilities, but where you want to be very involved, you do need a good support network.
I hear a lot of the echoes of the way you network at work, and the way it's not networking, it's building relationships. And then you've got to, and building relationships doesn't mean I gained this relationship and now I have it forever. It's always building relationships, which means reciprocity, which means if you're asking for help, you should be ready to give help.
For me, it sounds complex when I talk about it and I listen to myself talking about it, but living it, I try to keep things as simple as possible. It's really not that complex. It's not that complex to get through a day. You can make it complex if you want, but really there's not a lot of things we have to do, right? We have to eat, we have to sleep, what you choose and how complex you choose to make it is totally up to you for the most part, right? You check the boxes you have to check, and then everything else is kind of gratis, and you choose it. You choose your path. And how challenging are you going to make today? How productive are you going to make today? There's days when I'm not productive. I might go sit on the deck and have coffee and read for an hour or two, and I might need that day. Or there's days when I don't even sit down at all, and I'm running, and I might check 20 things off the list that day and maybe only 5 the day before, but everything you do does something for you. And I would say around letting go of perfection and simplifying is that you're ultimately in control. So always remembering that. I have to remind myself of that sometimes when I see 1,000 things on my list and I'm like, I have to get through these today. You're ultimately in control, and you can prioritize. So that's one thing that's always good to remember. Another thing in, letting go of perfection and simplifying is being authentic and admitting to yourself and to others, frankly. When you do that, I think that vulnerability you were referencing just a moment ago, that helps people know that you are human, and it helps them see that they can relate to you in things. You guys might not be at the same place in your career or your life or your lifestyle, but when they can see that, you're vulnerable, you have faults, that you need help too. And I think all those things go to building those relationships, and letting them know that, they need to meet you where you are too. It's not just meeting them where they are, but nobody's got it all figured out.
You said something that's pretty profound. And I think that a lot of folks that are listening, I know I am taking some inspiration from it. It's really about building a life that works for you. Like you're saying yes to things, and sometimes it means that, yes, I'm working at night, but it's because you are saying yes to things that you love, you're doing, you're passionate about doing. I'm hoping that you're not it doesn't sound from our interview so far that you're overwhelming yourself with things that you hate. So you've sort of built this place for yourself in your own life where you like your work, you're good at it, you've built the confidence and the expertise over the years. You've built time to spend with your family, time as well. You found time to spend with, in private, reflection at night when you need to. And so it does sound like you've built a life that works for you. And I think, really that's what the Savage Simplicity podcast is all about. It's not necessarily about productivity, and it's not about life hacks. It's really about taking control of the things that you can, because you're not in control of everything. And there's a lot we're not in control of, but we are in control of so much more than we think. And if we can over time just make it a little bit better for ourselves every day. That's continuous improvement, that focus on, if I do something a little bit better today, I have faith that tomorrow's going to be better than today was, and today's better than yesterday was, right? All right, so we're going to go into the rapid fire rounds, and I want to make sure your time is respected so that we end on time here. But what is one daily ritual that you swear by?
I go to the gym every single day, pretty much. And I also read. Those are things that I do specifically for me that I generally don't give up on.
That is amazing, because I am trying to find time to read, and I cannot find time. So I think I've got to look at my schedule and how intentional my schedule is and how much I'm saying yes to. What is the most energizing part of your work?
Working with people. That's definitely the most energizing thing, when we work together and we get to a great solution.
What is your favorite thing to do with your kids?
Travel.
Oh, yeah. What's your favorite place to travel to?
We went to Rome last year, which was beyond amazing, and we're going to Ireland this year. And so travel, we love Disneyland too. You know, who doesn't love Disneyland? So travel definitely, hands down, is something, especially right now while the kids are still young enough. They're not off charting their own courses yet. I have their captive attention, whether they want me to or not. And so we're traveling.
Wow. So you can read, go to the gym, travel to amazing places with your kids, all while being this amazing, doing this amazing job that you do. That is quite, like I said, I just can't stop saying it. It's quite inspirational.
Yeah.
Okay, last question, and then we can close out the interview. What is your personal motto?
Personal motto, gosh. Probably starting each day with a grateful heart. That I never take anything for granted. And so I think always keeping that in front of me helps me stay driven in some cases. And then, that's I think probably the one that I lead with every day. And then I guess if I could give you another one, is that, and I tell this to my daughter a lot, and that's why it's kind of popping up in my head right now. And she's 13, so it's that time, right? Is that you can't control every situation, but you can control how you react to it. And that, every time I remind myself of that, it helps me level set. And that is a huge stress reliever, is that, yeah, things are going to pop up that are hard, they're things you don't want to do, but taking a moment and controlling your reaction in the moment there, giving yourself time to process, it's something invaluable. And it sounds simple. It's hard to learn, but
oh yeah,
once you practice it, it becomes second nature. And if you can get to that point where it's second nature, then you've solved so many challenges, because the bulk of what is a challenge we create for ourselves.
Words of wisdom from Jen Carmichael, reminding us to be authentic and vulnerable and start each day off with a grateful heart. This has been Savage Simplicity Storytellers. Check in with us next week as we talk with returner Priya Venkatasan on reclaiming her career, work, worth, and the returner experience. Until then, this is Bernadette Hill reminding you to be savage.